All right, welcome to War Media Bears recap for Week 16. The Buffalo Bills came into Soldier Field and convincingly beat the Bears 35-13 in the crazy conditions. The Bears continue their quest for the best draft pick possible as they fall to 3-12, and we'll also get into the playoff push in the AFC and the NFC. I am Saul Rodriguez with the War Media boss man Kyle Means. How you doing, man? How was your holiday weekend?
Yeah, man, holiday was cool. It was not as eventful as some other ones, but I was able to have a good time and gave a good gift time and just it was laid back. I spent so much time on the holiday itself on Sunday just watching sports. Like I was there times I was kind of tired of sports by the end of the day because I was watching that Sun game like in the
Oh yeah.
morning, and then Gordon did the dunk, and I was like, that was it for me, man. But it was a great day, just of all the football, all the basketball. It was a real cool day, and the holiday itself, being the weather of the whole weekend was sort of like it just shut a lot down. So I'm glad. That's it. I'm glad able to thaw out in time to do this video. Since you went out there Saturday, I commend you on your work once again.
Yeah, no, I agree that with how Christmas went, it just felt different for this year, especially with what was going on with the weather and all that stuff. But no, yeah, it was the definition of freezing on Saturday, and especially like the walking and stuff with transportation. I mean, I take public trains, that, so it's like all over the place. It was pretty cold, but I will say this: the heater in the press box held up, which it's as sometimes it doesn't hold up. A lot of people complain about it, but it worked out well, and it was nice and warm in there, so that worked out. But it was cool, man. I mean, also we talked about this before, but it was good. It was good, man. Yeah, it was good. I mean, like I said, it was a little different than other years, but it was still fun though. And then we celebrate in our household. We celebrate Saturday and Sunday, so it was good to get that. And also I did watch plenty of the. I always made sure to have the TV on for the sports, not like any type, whether it was Saturday with football and basketball, or sorry, football and also Sunday with football and basketball. But even it didn't even stop like Monday for all the soccer viewers out there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say Saturday too played a part in like my fatigue by the end of Sunday. Like, yeah, most of the NFL schedule was on Saturday, and you had, there's a couple bowls and stuff. It was like, it was a great week overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also we talked about it too that for the Bears game, going back to the Bears game, is how Lupe Fiasco was there, and I was telling everyone, like, I was like, yeah, I was getting the at halftime, getting my food at halftime, and then I was about to sit back down, and I heard that he was already playing. I was like, but he ended up only playing one song, so that was a downer, because I thought he was going to sing at least a couple, but it's all good because he's saying, like I said, he's saying kick push, so that's all I wanted.
Not in that weather, man.
What's up? Oh yeah, now right. True. Yeah, that's a good point.
Played the big. He was like, I'm it's freaking minus 40 degrees, man. That's all you getting out of me. They probably had it on the contract too, like. You play this song, you play Kick Push, Superstar, and they touched his verse from Touch the Sky.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, he had to rework that. I don't blame him. They got to do that. They got to do that in September, man.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it was part of you were trying to get people. I guess you're trying to give the people a little bit more on, give them a little more reason to come out.
Yeah, true.
But if you want a night, you want an artist like that to perform, do it in September, do it in October, maybe. Don't do it in December. Just give the people extra blankets in December or something,
exactly,
or some free hot chocolate or something.
Yeah, they definitely needed it on Saturday for sure. The people that were there, it was crazy. I thought it was going to be a low showing from the crowd, but it wasn't. There was plenty of people that filled in eventually. So, but yeah, yeah. So, what were your thoughts overall
There's
in the
some
game? I
good
mean,
energy too, right?
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. What were your overall thoughts in the game? I mean, we'll start with the quarterback, QB1, Justin Fields. Your overall thoughts on him. The Bills were able to contain Fields in the running game. He had some nice throws though. He threw another touchdown, his 16th of the year, and he has thrown at least one in 9 of his last 10 contests. And also to touch on, especially something that came out yesterday, I should say, that the Bears and Matt Eberflus are firm on playing Fields in the last 2 games. They were a lot of people were talking about whether the Bears should shut him down for the last 2 games of the season with his injuries and just because these games don't matter. But they were firm on that and saying it's all about development and all that and yeah. So what were your overall thoughts on Fields on Saturday, and as well as Matt Eberflus's comments on Fields?
Well, yeah, was just starting off from Saturday. I think the one of the good things about that game, it wasn't too much by the end, but the beginning of the game was nice. The way that they started out, they came out right away with a score on the first drive, and that was pretty much, it set the tone for what we see from the team throughout the game. They just didn't really do much compiling yards, and they didn't really get back into the end zone until late in the game. But Fields was able to, he played a lot of the role of a game manager more in this game than we typically expect from. He didn't bust out any big runs in this game, unfortunately, and he ended up with about 15 to 23 completions, 119 yards. So he was dealing mostly in the short games, really just trying to keep control of the game and control of the clock. But didn't turn over the ball, which was fine. But they didn't really get, he distributed the ball too. Looking at the number of receivers who caught the ball, who got touches, got looks, but they didn't really break out any big plays like we were able to see them do against the Eagles the week prior, another top defense. But in this case with Buffalo, they just seem to have the Bears number much more than pretty much any defense has had in recent memory with the Bears. And in spite of that hot start, unfortunately, the Bills are built to play in that weather, and they were able to adjust quick enough and keep control of the game. By the time they were able to, get to that third quarter, it was a nice first half in general for the team. Ended up with a 10-6 lead going into halftime, but by the time they came out of the break, the Bills were able to turn it up in that third quarter with 15 points, and then they had a couple more scores in the fourth, and the Bears were done by that point. But yeah, it's just sort of a statement on Buffalo's part, I think, and a statement in regards to Bears just showing the gulf, the real gulf that's there between them and a true Super Bowl contender in Buffalo. And going to what comes out of the game, of course, the statements by Eberflus, the resolve that's there to keep playing Fields throughout the last 2 games. I understand the argument definitely from the other side where you want to be careful with Fields, but you can't wrap him in plastic and put him on the shelf. He's a football player. Fields wants to play. He wants to, he on some level, I don't think he's prioritized that over anything to do with the team, but he's admitted as such to wanting to at least make an effort to have the quarterback rushing season record, currently held by Lamar Jackson. It's still, he hurt himself actually with the effort against Buffalo, only 11 yards rushing against Buffalo, but he still has an outside chance to get that with a couple of big games against Detroit. So there's that for him. And there's also just the experience of playing against teams that are competitive in late December, early January. These two teams that he's going to face are going to give him their all because they're trying to secure their spots in the playoffs. And they're also division rivals, so you always want to get as much tape as you can on those division rivals. And there's a good chance for there'll be opportunities for Fields to regain confidence coming out of a more middling performance and also do something in these last 2 weeks that'll play forward into 2023 when he'll be facing particularly Detroit and Minnesota.
No, yeah, and I agree with that. Like the fact that these last two games, or just in general, the seconds, after the bye week, those games where they're playing against very competitive teams, it's only going to help, Fields and his development as well as the team overall. As much as the team is, there's a lot of injuries, but it'll still help in general. And in the next week too, against the Lions, I think it'll with them being inside will also help out. I think his running game will come back next week, and it'll be
fast track potentially
exactly.
up there in Detroit.
Yeah,
that's like I say, you can't be. He's not going to allow you to be gentle with him. He's not going to allow you to be precious with him. He wants to go out and play. He wants to go out and compete, and add as much to his development and the team's development as possible. So let him roll. If there's any sign that he could, be hurting himself during the game, then throw Peterman in. But if he's doing what he can and he's playing game that he wants to against Detroit, then there's no reason to not let him keep going.
Mm-hmm. And then also another thing that was not necessarily surprising, but it was good to see a little bit of a bounce back game, for Velus Jones Jr. Right, he had maybe his best game of his career. Right, he totaled 165 yards on Saturday, including 113 on kick returns and 44. He had, or one of his best plays was a 44-yard reception, and then his longest kick return was 40 yards. But what did you see from his game? Like, as he finally, do you think maybe this is it where he turns a corner? Because, that would be huge. As much as injuries are not positives, I think, these injuries might have been the best thing that happened for him because he was kind of, in that wide receiver one spot with even, Equanimeous St. Brown injured. So what did you see from Jones on Saturday?
Yeah, like you say, the injuries allowed him to play at a sort of a number one, number two position and in the wide receiver depth chart this week, and he took advantage of it with a couple of receptions. The big one, of course, like you mentioned, just a fantastic play, a deep bomb thrown by Fields, and Velus was able to showcase his speed in that opportunity, got under the ball, avoided the defender, and made a nice little slide and play that. And I'm sure he feels good about what he's able to show in that play. It shows a lot of the ability that we were hoping that he would show through, earlier in the season. But I think it's a nice step forward for him. And I don't, as far as his, calling for him to be off of this team, there's a reason for that, of course, when you fumble punt returns or kick returns and stuff and do stuff like that. But we got to remember he is a third round pick, so his half life on the team has not reached that point yet. He was gonna be a returning member of the team next year. So I'm not investing too much in what happens in these last couple games unless he really just snaps and has a real big game to come in against Detroit or Minnesota and really shows something. But if he's like whack a kid, if he just has a real, unless it's something just really numb-brain that he does, I don't see him being a threat for being axed, being let go. So he still has a way to go in his development, and going adding to that development is going to be more snaps, and the fact that Equinemius is out, and other people like Claypool are struggling to get themselves on the field. That's helping him out, and I think from what we've seen of the kid, he has a bit of resilience to him. He's a kid, but he's not a kid, being that he's 25.
Yeah.
So I think more so than maybe a 20 or 21-year-old, I think he may have a bit of added perspective than a younger guy in his position, where he can just be like, okay, I could get past this. I've already worked hard enough to get in this position. I could deal with a setback. If I just keep working hard and focusing, I'll get to the place where I want to be as a contributor to the team. So I'm not too worried about him in regards to his overall, status on the team. Like I say, he's going to be on the team next year. Let's just hope that he keeps developing and he shows a little something more, because his natural abilities are something that can be very helpful to Justin and to that offense.
Yeah, and also when I hear those calls for him to be like cut after the season, I'm like, do the Bears, are the Bears really in a spot where they should just be throwing away players like that? Like, no.
They're not
So
that deep, man.
Yeah, exactly. So
they're not that deep to be letting go of anybody,
yeah,
unless they bring on somebody else.
Yeah. So that's Anyways, but kind of transitioning now to our playoff push segment of the show. We'll talk a little bit about the Bills, the winner of the game on Saturday against the Bears. At 12-3, what did you learn? Watching them against the Bears, it was obviously tough conditions, but nothing these guys don't know coming obviously from Buffalo. But Dawson Knox, I think, is a big key for them, and I thought he was going to leave the game in for good in the first quarter because he got slammed down, but he was able to return. This is a team that wins games even when guys like Stephon Diggs are in a little bit of a slump. Gabe Davis and the other guys just fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I learned. But yeah, what did you see and what did you learn from the Bills that you didn't know, at least?
Yeah, man. I'm interested to get your thoughts on it too. Being that you ever see them up close, but watching the game, they're built for this time of year. Being from up where they are near Lake Erie in New York, they're ready for these type of games, cold weather games against their rugged team. They with Josh Allen, there's always the threat of sort of a thing that the Bears hope to play into over the course of Fields' career, where you always have that dual threat of running and passing from the quarterback position at an elite level. And even when Allen isn't throwing great, and that was the case on Saturday, he didn't have a great passing game. He still was able to have 6 runs for 41 yards and a touchdown. That it opens things up for his offense enough where the threat of his running from the traditional running backs, that really shone through. Look at the games that Singletary and Cook had. James Cook, combined for about 200 yards rushing themselves. They really took advantage of the Bears' rushing defense in the way that we had for in recent weeks. That was really one of the true failures of the Bears in the first half of the season, their rushing defense, and that came back to haunt. It tempered down a little bit in recent weeks, but it came back to haunt the Bears in this game against the Bills. So, them being unable to stop Singletary and stop Cook, both of those guys average, Singletary averaged 8.8 yards a carry, Cook 90 yards a carry, and Allen 6.8. So, when they're just run that with each of your run plays, that's a hard thing to stop. And it was a perfect way for Buffalo to gain control of the game when they didn't, like I said, the first half, they didn't have much of a game. They were able to just run down the Bears' throat eventually and, run down the defense and take control of the second half. And that's a type of option, type of performance that they could provide for themselves in the weeks to come, especially with a chance to be at home doing those things in the AFC playoffs. So they're an impressive team. I remember seeing them here in the preseason last year, and before, when though the Bears were still being coached by Nagy and everything, and there was buzz around Buffalo then about them being the contender, and they wind up, of course, getting far in the AFC, not as far as they wanted to the divisional round, but they still played an excellent season. They were able to knock off New England in that East Division and really establish themselves as an AFC contender. But what I remember going back to that preseason game in 21 was that they were just so much readier for the season at that point than the Bears were. They were more well coached. They seemed to be more organized. A lot of that is something that, the Bears did away with Nagy, but, the Bears they're better coached now than they were then. But Buffalo continues to be even, better coached with McDermott and Leslie Frazier on the defense and everything. They're one of the best coached teams in the league. And, I think they're ready for whatever they need to see going forward as a potential Super Bowl representative for the AFC.
Yeah, and you mentioned the running game. That's what I was thinking too. Is that I think it was that they ran for a season high in rushing yards. I believe it was 254. And they really did what I thought the Eagles were going to do a week before, which was run the ball down the Bears' throats with Sanders and whatnot. But that didn't happen. So this this past weekend they did it with Cook and Singletary. And I wasn't really familiar with Cook, but with Singletary, I thought that I wasn't surprised by that whatsoever. But yeah, they really had a two-headed monster there.
I've liked Singletary for a while. Yeah, and I thought that there's more they can do with him, but he still had that ability to make plays, and he showed that this week. And like I was like, who's this Cook guy, man? He's just making all these plays. I haven't been seeing him do stuff like this all season, but he was there on Saturday.
Yeah, and that that's the thing that I was saying is like, they really ran amok there with those two guys, and honestly with Josh Allen, I was surprised he didn't try more to run, but he did have 6 carries, 41 yards. But also another thing with Allen was he's always I feel like those type of quarterbacks, you know what to expect from him. But I've always just expected them to make a Super Bowl run even earlier than this. And even like, I think, they could do it in this year, but it's always the Chiefs, or it's always, even the Bengals or whatever that could, have been able to, make it out of there, make it out of the AFC. But I will say this also, staying on the game on Saturday, there were a couple throws, especially the second interception, Nicholas Morrow, was a little bit of an odd throw. It's something you don't see a lot with Josh Allen is a questionable throw.
He was
there,
like on the run, and
and it was like to double coverage, maybe even triple. I forgot, but it was just an odd throw. But trying to force
Allen has a little bit of that gunslinger in him, where it causes him to make plays that he shouldn't at times. If as a defense, if you can take advantage of those moments and make him and force him to turn over the ball, that's a good thing, a good sign of the Bears defense right now, where we're seeing even that as a stripped down unit with injuries affecting them, they still showing heart and showing a willingness to play and be gamers, essentially, that allow them to keep the team within range of these competitive teams that they played in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, and as you say, with his the way that Josh Allen plays, and I think that's kind of what has been his downfall in the playoffs, when when things don't go as well his way, a lot of interceptions and stuff like that. But I'm pulling for this guy. This is a team that
he's got to mature.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those teams too. Like there's a lot of things to like from this team. With plenty of weapons that they have there. So definitely see them having a success. Hopefully, for them, it's the year they finally pull through. Another team in the AFC that what's up?
Too, before we look at the
Mhm.
quick before we look at the other teams, I just want to shout out their travel people because they was kind of
Yeah.
stuck in Chicago, and it was a possibility that they wouldn't even make it to the Buffalo area before the Monday, but they wound up flying into Rochester nearby on Sunday, on a Sunday afternoon, I think. So I'm definitely I kind of followed that line and happy for them that they were able to get home in time for the holidays. Sort of, I made a mention to a movie. Y'all don't know if you remember the movie. Some of our audience may not remember Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but that was a movie with Steve
I just
Martin
watched
and
that.
John Candy, and they were trying to get trying to get home on Thanksgiving.
That was the first time I
they
watched
was
it.
in a tight spot for.
Yeah, the first time I watched it was this year, actually.
Yeah,
Surprisingly. Yeah. It was one of those movies that I heard so much about, and then finally I was like, I gotta watch it. Yeah. And then but it's funny you mentioned that because actually now I remember that the people in front of me, most of the people that usually sit in front of us in the press box are from the other team. And it was a couple of the news channels from Buffalo. And it's all they were talking about at the beginning of before the game. Like they were just, oh, how'd you get there? Or when blah 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 this. Like one guy said he drove from Buffalo.
Wow.
Yeah, some were saying our hotels, like, there was a problem with this or that, or the travel or their planes and all that. So props to them. I mean, it was rough. And also for the sideline reporters, because I know there was a guy that was on the sidelines before the game and he came up to the press box. And it was just, I'm like, that's that, on a day like that, it must have been really rough. So, but now, moving on to another AFC team, the Chargers. They clinched their first playoff berth since 2018, with defeating the Colts on Monday Night Football 20-3. It's their fifth win in the last 7 games after starting 2-6 on the campaign. What I was going to ask you is, do you think this is the year that Herbert and the Chargers finally make a run, like at least like the AFC Championship or something like that? I mean, they have, Bosa, they have Khalil Mack in the defense, who just made a 7th Pro Bowl. And on the offensive side, I mean, they always, it's always the usual suspects: Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. I mean, even Josh Kelly looks good when he's out there. He's kind of like their Khalil Herbert out there. But yeah, just what do you think about the Chargers overall? And if this year is the year they make the run?
I mean, they got a talented team. I think what has hindered them in the past is Staley, the coach, and his sort of inexperience in some of the that he's had in be it in play calling or game management. So I think maybe he's starting to grow as a coach, and that team in general, they're so talented on both sides. They can always be deemed as a threat. And like I say, they had a rough start this year, able to get from behind that and get over that and put themselves into it looks like they're going to be put themselves into a place where they could be a threat in the postseason. I'll be interested to see what their matchup is. If I guess right now they looks like they'll have to play Cincinnati in wild card because they're the 6 and Cincinnati is the 3. So it'll be key to see who they play in that first round. Will they have to win in the shootout, which I think they would have to do definitely against Cincinnati, or will they be able to, play a more, if they play like a Baltimore or something, maybe they'd have to play a different type of game that they're used to, and that could a little bit more idiocentric game that may not work for them. So I think they could do either or. They could. The AFC, is pretty. I think it'll be pretty matchup based in regards to who succeeds and who doesn't. You got a lot of teams who could do a lot of different things on offense, and in that playoff hunt right now. But only a couple teams I see looking at them who can really affect the team on defense, or affect the game on defense, I should say. So actually, I think the matchups will be key. But I think the Chargers have as much promise as anyone in the AFC right now.
No, yeah, that is true. And then also just the fact that, as you mentioned, if they have to play the Bengals in the first round, that's going to be rough for the Chargers there. But nonetheless, they do have an opportunity to take them down. So it'll be a fun matchup if we see Burrow versus Herbert there. Well, moving on to
Yeah.
another AFC team is the Steelers. It's 7-8. They're one of the 10 teams that are 7-8. They're still in the hunt after their 13-10 win versus Las Vegas. And their their New Year's Day game against the Ravens was flexed to Sunday night. Hopefully it's Pickett versus Lamar. His status is kind of still up in the air. They're being coy with it. Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season, and it looks like the Steelers are saying that's not going to happen this year either. But what are your thoughts overall on the Steelers? Like, you think they have obviously a tough end of their season there with playing that Ravens team. If it is Lamar, it's Huntley is no pushover either. But even if it is him, they'll have a tough time. But after the Ravens, they play the Browns too. So, what do you think there with the Steelers?
Man, I think the Steelers got a good chance to go 9-8
Mm-hmm.
and be in a position where they're not going to be in control of their fate for the next couple weeks, but they could be in as good a position as anyone in that bubble situation. The teams that are directly ahead of them, the Titans, Jets, Patriots, Dolphins, even Dolphins are still at 7th spot at least, but all those teams lost this week. So it was a great week for Pittsburgh in that regard, where they still have a hold on. So, they just have the type of that franchise. They just seem to always play themselves to something, even when they shouldn't. And they got a lot of pride there. And again, I think they're one of the better coach teams in the league too, with Mike Tomlin. So, Pickett is he's a rookie quarterback, so there's going to be pluses and minuses all around with him. There's going to be moments where he looks like a rookie quarterback in a bad way, a completely bad way, and in some ways it's good for him because he doesn't have the baggage of a vet or anything to carry right now. So he's just out there playing. And when you got guys like George Pickens and Najee Harris and people like that, you can just go out there and play. And I think that's what we're going to see from the next from him 2 weeks. Got to worry about Mitch coming back and taking the position. He just has a really bad something, a really bad for something. But I think the team wants him in that position to be their guy, and they'll feel more confident with him than they would in Mitch, unfortunately. So, unfortunately for Mitch,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he just got to go out there and play, and I think the team around him is going to raise up to his level, whatever Pickett provides to them.
Yeah, no, that is true, and especially it's cool to see Pickett get the opportunity. I mean, we've seen what Trubisky's had his opportunities, so it's not like they didn't try. They tried it. So it's cool to see Pickett kind of he's still got a long way to go, but it's still nice to see him on this getting this opportunity for a playoff push with this team, and this team has plenty of weapons to definitely make it to the postseason. So it'll be definitely interesting, and also with Mike Tomlin as well. With just trying to see that if that streak can remain alive of him not having a losing season is pretty cool. So hopefully that all works out for them. But shifting over that, it's a good segue now to the NFC, because another team that's 7-8 is the Green Bay Packers. They just came off from defeating. Right. No, I know, right? And they just came off from defeating a deteriorating Dolphins team. Man, I mean, a team that a lot of people were talking about making a big run in the playoffs, but it just hasn't happened. Tua got picked off a couple times. And it's just not looking so good with him and the concussion protocol and all that. But that's another story. But when it comes to the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, what have you seen from them and kind of like this almost like the second life that they have? I mean, even without, I know I saw memes and they were just like, oh, like the last time Aaron Rodgers had 11 interceptions in a season, they went to the Super Bowl in 2010. So and then also just seeing like all these memes about like Devontae Adams and how like he definitely regrets going to Las Vegas and all this and whatever. But anyway, what are your overall thoughts on the Packers
His
there? And
next regretted though.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But well, yeah. What do you think about the
Yeah.
Packers and this run that they're making right now, man?
Before I go in on the Packers, yeah, I just say on the real side, hopefully with Tua, there's
Yeah.
nothing, there's nothing too bad with him because,
Mm,
when you look at the way that he ended that game on Christmas Day, like it just seemed like something had to be off because he just kept throwing interceptions, he kept throwing bad balls, and some people may say, well, that's speaks to the limits of his ability, but he's been through a rough season and physically, and just hope that he's not coming to a point where he's breaking
hmm
down really. And so, like I say, shout out to Tua and wish the best for him. But these damn Packers, man, I'm sick of the Packers. They shouldn't be alive right now for anyone to talk about them in the playoffs, but they're there. They're a team that, like we just said with the Steelers, they benefited from teams around them losing. Uh, the Lions lost, Seahawks lost right in front of them on the bubble. Commanders lost, and they're in the number 7 spot in the NFC. Giants lost too. So, there's a chance for Green Bay, and when
hmm
you have Aaron Rodgers, there's always a chance for you. So, they get to welcome the two division teams in that the Bears are playing also in the uh, last couple of weeks. They're all rotating around, so they're going to welcome Minnesota and then Detroit in for 2 games at Lambeau. It's you're a Packers hater. It's not a good situation, I would say. But hey, and I don't get me started on 2010 because the Bears played a role in that.
yeah.
They let him get into the postseason, knowing that it was going to come back and bite them on the behind,
Yep.
and that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
It's just the Bears are Charlie Brown and Aaron Rodgers. So you know, Godspeed to him. He'll get his heart broken eventually. Maybe if it be in the wild card round, or
hmm
I'm not predicting actually that he's gonna make. But if he gets in the playoffs, they're just not as deep enough or as skilled enough a team, I think,
hmm
to match up with any of the true contenders in the NFC. But in spite of them having, and he's not the guy who he was in 2010, 2011. So I wouldn't. They're not a threat. But the fact that they're even in position
hmm
irks me for obvious reasons. And it is what it is. I was hoping that Miami would dominate. Of course, we didn't get that. That wasn't a gift for me under the tree. But we'll see how this goes. The fact that Detroit and Minnesota are both in the hunt as well, and their division foes who themselves have to be sick of being outdone by the Packers as well. The Packers have done this to the whole division. They haven't just done it to the Bears. They've done it to the whole division over the course of their career. So hopefully one of them shows some heart in these last 2 games and puts him down and makes him feel the hurt even without him having to go to the playoffs to do it.
Yeah, and you bring up 2010 again as well with the way the Bears helped them out get there, get to the Super Bowl. I'll it'll forever be ingrained in my brain the BJ Raji touchdown, just the touchdown, the dance. It's
Yeah,
it'll forever be there.
it's the
So
type of thing that happens. Yeah.
yeah.
That's why he can say irony that he owns the Bears.
Yeah, yeah.
He does own the Bears because
Mhm.
they done nothing for him not to own.
That's true. And you're right in the sense that they're not deep enough. I mean, and especially on the defensive end. I mean, damn. I mean, it's rough there. So they'll definitely have trouble,
Yeah,
if they
they're
make it
not
there.
good.
So
Yeah, they're not going to deal with the Cowboys or the
no,
Niners.
yeah.
All teams are going to flat. They're going to flatten them if they would see any of those teams in the next or so.
Yeah, and shifting from one future Hall of Fame quarterback to another in Buccaneers, Tom Brady. TB12 leads the Bucs to comeback win in overtime against the Cardinals, and they were down 16-6 at one point in that game. They ended up winning 19-6. They lead that horrendous NFC South with a 7-8 record. Again, just another 7-8 team. Just we're going to be talking about them. Even the next team, we're going to be talking about a 7-8. So they got the Panthers and the Falcons, and next up, how do you see the Brady and the Bucs doing in the last 2 games of the season? I mean, all these games at the end of the season, they're divisional games, but for the Buccaneers, they got a team in the Panthers who are
Yeah.
still fighting for a playoff spot with Sam Darnold, and you got a Falcons team that the Bears saw them, despite they're not going anywhere, but the fact that they have some nice weapons on that team to definitely put up a fight.
Well, starting off with Tampa Bay and brings another guy who, like Rodgers, you can't ever count him out. And Brady more so because he performs better in the postseason than Rodgers does. So Brady showed once again on Christmas why when you give him a chance, when you leave the door open for him at any bit, that he's going to make you pay. And, I would be more impressed with it if it wasn't against that horrible Arizona team. Arizona, is just, they're not a well-coached team.
Mm-hmm.
They're down to their third or fourth quarterback, like,
Mm-hmm.
and they have some good weapons, but again, it was Trace McSorley dueling with with Brady. It's like, come on, man. You only
Mm-hmm.
get 19 points. It almost was a tie game.
Yeah.
They played that almost to the second half of the time. So it's like, as far as Brady and that team overall, their overall threat in the NFC, I don't see it. Their whole season is coming down to these 2 weeks in these games, like you said, these intra-division games, which is when you look at the NFL and the way that they want to milk the drama out of these wild card races and stuff. They do great by the fans by making the schedule the way that they weeks, where you're playing your division rivals, and just the having that 7th wild card team, that 7th playoff team, I should say, the extra wild card team has made such a difference in expanding the focus of the playoff hunt
Mm-hmm.
to basically everybody but like 7 teams in the league now. It's like 8. I'm looking on NFL.com. It's 8 teams that are eliminated in the playoff picture that
Mm-hmm.
NFL.com has. 32 teams in the league. So you have 3/4 of the league still talking about playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and there's only 2 teams. That's exactly what the NFL wants.
Yeah.
And on the downside of that, you have these games where you have 2 losing teams that are facing each other. 2 teams that we know, and this particular week coming up with Carolina and Tampa Bay. These are 2 teams that we know aren't going to do anything in January, but they still have all the drama of not only a playoff hunt, but a division. Basically, division is going to be on the line with this game, because if Carolina wins this week, they'll be in position to win the division next week. So it's amazing how much the NFL. The dreams are there for everybody to see, but we love it, man.
Mm-hmm.
They put everybody in where we are interested in these games, even if they're being played halfway across the country with 2 middling teams that aren't gonna do anything in the postseason. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's kind of, I think, what the NBA and Major League Baseball as well try to do, with expanding their playoffs, is to get more teams in the hunt late, because
Mm-hmm.
it makes it just that more entertaining. And we saw that, with baseball, we saw that in, the NBA with the playing rounds. It's more to watch, so it's more entertaining in perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the Buccaneers, yeah, it's just uh, with that matchup against the Panthers will definitely be one to watch, because those two teams are somehow clawing their way and trying to make them, trying to remain in that playoff
And
conversation.
The Panthers deserve a lot of props too, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For them, as bad as they were in the first half of the season, to be anywhere close
Mm-hmm.
to a division title or a playoff spot in any way speaks to their ability to rally around Steve Wilkes as
Mm-hmm.
coach, and you know, their Sam Darnold, and just
Mm-hmm.
like he's like I say he's steadied himself in his play, and they just they have some good guys on defense. They did, I think half the league wanted them to trade. No, they wanted that Carolina defense to be broken up like the Bears defense was
Mm-hmm.
at trade deadline, but they held on to their guys, and they've played well in the second half, well enough to still be a factor. So, like I say, a lot of props is deserved of Carolina for even being in this position.
Yeah, and especially because of the fact that, I feel like every time Sam Darnold plays, he's got this great connection with DJ Moore, so it that kind of helps out the offense a
Yeah,
whole lot.
that's
And
another
it
got people wanted to get trade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the fact that they've stuck with them, and it's obviously helped them out better than any situation, like even like Baker Mayfield, for example. But going on to the Seahawks
yeah,
now, another
yeah,
NFC team.
that's
Yeah.
crazy
Going on now to
situation.
the Seahawks with being another 7-8 team, right? They're on a 3-game losing streak. And man, I was hyped with this team at the beginning of the season when they had, Geno Smith going off, and not to say he hasn't, but just the whole team hasn't necessarily been on the same page there. And do you think that's, in other words, do you think they're cooked? Like, do you think that's it? Like, do you think they bounce back from this? I mean, they lost the Chiefs this week 24-10. It's a game they're supposed to lose, I know, but they now face a team in the Jets that despite having a QB issue, they're a team that's not going to go down easily. And you have a Rams team that somehow found life last week with Baker Mayfield. Like, sure, it was the Broncos, but it won't also be easy there. So do you think we can safely put the Seahawks away, or do you think that Geno will find a Smith to rally these guys in the last 2 games of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on what your expectations were. They were for a little while maybe the best story in football,
Mm-hmm.
but they just came back to they just came back to
Mm-hmm.
a place where we could sort of comfortably have them reside, which is on the playoff bubble. They're in an 8 spot. They're half game out from Washington, who isn't really a threat to anybody, I would say. So I would put Seattle in a similar position. They're just a team that is looking to their team with a good deal of pride. They have a coach who's done a lot of winning. He wants to be in the playoffs again, and he wants to show. I mean, they've already shown that they can move on from Russell Wilson better than Russell can move on from them. So I think that's to be proud of for this season. And they'll lose in the wild card round at best. I think that'll be the most you could expect from them in this season. Now, like I said, these games you lay them out. Sure, they could win them both, I think, and be 9-8, and I said getting that wild card spot and lose in the first weekend. But that's pretty much all I see from them. It's interesting that last game could against the Rams could mean difference, because right now I would say Rams are more of a threat to a playoff team than Seattle is overall. When you look at the way that Mayfield is playing since he got on that team, he had an amazing game against Denver, and again it is Denver's defense has been much more reliable than this offense been. The defense really hasn't been a problem throughout the course of the season for Denver. It's been the offense. So, but Mayfield dissected them. And he came on and he won that game on Monday night or Thursday night in like 2 drives. So Mayfield, ironically, it seems like he just fell on his behind and bounced right back up. Like it was like he fell on a pillow or something, man. So good for him and good for the Rams. I think as much as they fell off this year from their Super Bowl win, they have something to look forward to next season. Regardless of how their quarterback situation is, how my man comes back. I'm blanking on his name, but the old starter there. Yeah, regardless of how he comes back.
Stafford,
yeah. Regardless of how Stafford comes back, they have Mayfield there as probably one of the top 2 or 3 ups in the league, and who they can feel confident in as a starter. If regardless of Stafford's ability going into 2023. Excuse me. So I'm interested. I'll be interested how that final game goes between Rams and Seattle. I think Seattle, or would they be at home against the Jets in this game?
They're both home. The last 2 games are home.
For Seattle?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, that's even better for them.
Mm-hmm.
Having playing those games at home, there's a good chance they could go 9-8, but I would expect the season to end at 9-9 if they play an 18th game.
Yeah, and you are right in the sense that you said it depends on your expectations for them at the beginning of the season. That this is definitely not what they expected. So they're basically just playing with house money at this point to just be enjoying, or you should be enjoying this run that they're making at the very least.
And look, when you look at teams that are really built well, they drafted well this year and got. They got the cornerback who's a Pro Bowler in his rookie year. I forget the name, but I know he's been shutting stuff down. They got some other. They did well in the trade. Their return on the trade with Wilson with Denver. So they got a lot of young talent. They're flipping over guys on their team. And Geno, his performance this year is great. It's great to see that he was able to make something of his career again, because a lot of people wrote him off. And I think Geno has a good chance to get a job somewhere else in the league. I don't see him being the future guy in Seattle, though. Seattle can have a top 5 pick, and they could be in play, because of their trades again with Denver. They have a chance to pick up a quarterback in this coming draft, young or stout. Young from Alabama or C.J. Stout from Ohio State, and they can move on just like that with a young franchise quarterback and a team around them that is already built up, that has playoff or close to playoff experience. So Seattle's in a great spot, and if I was a Seattle fan, I wouldn't give a damn about the playoffs this year. I would just be like, look, let's finish this off. Let's see what we can do, but I'm ready to see what we can get in this next draft. And, thanks to Geno for his work, he can move on and get some money. But we'll get one of these young quarterbacks in this draft, and we'll move on, as a potential threat for real next year.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the guy you're thinking about is Tariq Woolen, who made the Pro Bowl. Yeah, made the Pro Bowl for Seattle. But you're right. And you're right in that sense, like that, this is just the beginning for them. And with certain, obviously Geno Smith's going to go on, and that's good. I mean, it's cool to see a guy like Geno Smith. Like, that's one of the reasons I was kind of, pulling for them earlier in the season, was because it's such a cool story, right? It's like what Geno Smith's been through, in general with the Jets and all that. And, people expecting a lot from him, and he wasn't able to get it. And now kind of, early on in the season, a lot of people were talking MVP with this guy. So it was really, it was
cool. Deserving.
Yeah, no, of
course. It wasn't just a story. He was putting up the numbers.
So it was good to see that, and for the run that they're making, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of positives to go forward with this team, and we'll see though. Definitely an opportunity to end the season 9-8 and play an extra game. So we'll see there. But I think that's a good place to wrap up this edition of War Media Bears recap, as well as our playoff push. I want to thank Kyle Means for joining us again this week. And the Bears, of course, are playing at the Lions this weekend. So we will continue our on-site Bears coverage next week in the season finale, where the Bears will host the Vikings. For Saul Rodriguez and again Kyle Means, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.